turn it loud. Miami's pride, make us proud. CanesWear crew, you hear the crowd. Hurricanes ain't backing down. Every play, every score, raising bets and raising roar. Rocking orange, green galore. All for one and one for four. We got FTSN, taking names, win it again. Broadcast fam, till the end. Tune in, now let's begin.
Yo, what's going on, Cane fans, all of our viewers and listeners that are tuned in? You are in for another CanesWear daily show only on FTSN. We got our guy Rob Hwang, editor of Writer for Cal and co-host of the Golden Bear Cast with us today. We're going to be breaking down the matchup this Saturday night. As y'all know, Cane fans, 10:30 Eastern time on ESPN. First time ever, College Game Day will be going to Berkeley, Cal. And our guy, Rob, he's been with Cal for a very long time. We'll talk to him and kind of break down this matchup. But, Rob, man, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining the show and taking some time out of your busy schedule this week. Like we mentioned off air, man, you got a busy schedule lined up with College Game Day. This is going to be an ultimate experience for Cal fans and Miami fans that'll be visiting Berkeley, man. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, thanks for the time. It's been 24 hours now, leading into day 2 of College Game Day week, but it's incredible. The fans are pumped. This all started with Calgorithm and everything a few weeks ago too. So yeah, it's been pretty nonstop hitters every single day, and somehow something surprises us every single day as well. So it's we're kind of excited to see what tomorrow brings.
You mentioned this Calgorithm thing. I'm glad you brought this up because I've been seeing it on Twitter the last couple of days. Kind of diagnose this and let us know what you mean by that for the listeners and viewers tuned in.
Yeah, I mean, so the Cal Twitter community has been around for a long time. We just haven't really hit any of the mainstream airwaves on Twitter, and then all of a sudden after we beat Auburn, and I joked around this with another pod yesterday, but like something about, I guess, beating Hugh Freeze like puts you on a different tier of like college football fandom, where the moment we beat Auburn, our memes just took off, and the one that really started it was by a buddy of ours, Don Grizel, and he posted one, and it just says like you lost to the woke agenda. And it just has a couple of our football players and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and we were just fully leaning into the jokes about us being, very liberal out here, and so yeah, and then that just took off. It did, I think, 1 million impressions or something like that in the first 72 hours, and then ever since then, it's just been nonstop. My phone and a few of the other editors and their phones, and whenever they post, it's like you can turn off your phone for 5 minutes, come back, and you'll hit like 15 to 30 notifications on likes and retweets. So it's been a few weeks, and Calgorithm is fully there, and everyone's enjoying it. I think the national guys, like we heard Jessica Smetana talk about it on their podcast on DraftKings, and some of the other former Pac-12 people like Ashley Adamson have been texting us and telling us like they're so happy for us and to see us kind of explode onto that national spotlight. So it's been a few weeks for sure.
For sure, man. Absolutely. And like you mentioned, the big win against Auburn at Auburn for that matter, definitely hit the Calgorithm a certain way. But as y'all know, in college football, with every weekend, things go up and down, and Miami just surpassed and, skated away with a big time win against Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, your Cal Bears is coming off a bye after losing to Florida State Seminoles, our arch rival, 14-9. How do you feel like this Cal football team is coming off a bye for one, and coming up off against a loss against probably the worst team in the ACC currently?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic to look at, just because historically Justin Wilcox has not done well coming off of a bye. This is, I think, his first or second year out of his 8 years here where we have 2 bye weeks. So that makes it a little bit more interesting. The health issue was big, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of the position groups later. But I think getting guys healthy from early on in the season was going to be key for this. Coming off of that, I think the guys especially coming off of that Auburn game and then beating San Diego State at home and then traveling to Florida State and to lose like that. I think the guys are pretty mad. And how they come out and what type of energy they come out with is going to be very interesting to see. Our quarterback Fernando Mendoza has talked about like wanting to basically break the cycle of Cal narratives, right? That they start off strong and they made and it goes up and down throughout the season. Sometimes you end up with 6-6, sometimes it's 5-7, sometimes it's 7-5, and he wants to break that cycle and come off of a loss like that and try and get back on the right path. So, we got to believe what the players are saying at their word, right? So we'll see on Saturday night how they come out.
You brought up quarterback Fernando Mendoza, who currently only has 892 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. This is a young man who's a sophomore currently at Cal, but he's originally from Miami, Columbus High School, where Mario Cristobal and others like Alex Mirabal and currently players on the team like Ron Rodriguez went to as well. And when you really listen to Fernando Mendoza's interviews that I've seen on social media here in the last couple of days, is you bring up the point of kind of cementing and changing a legacy or changing, the page of what you're used to of seeing it with Cal. But on the other end of Miami, I think a page that Miami fans are used to seeing is it's always those guys that Miami either doesn't offer or we look past in our backyard, that when the opportunity comes to really get that chance of playing that Miami program, you really give it your all and you do everything possible to stick it to them. And, if there's a way to kind of throw up that U upside down and get a W, you're going to do everything possible, right? And when you listen to Fernando talk, he kind of gives you that respect level where it's a little bit different than what we're used to, because this is a guy that always wanted to be a Miami Hurricane. He talked about, going to Manny Diaz, under the lights camps, paradise camps and whatnot, and really trying to get that offer from Miami, being at home, and ultimately going to Cal. And that's really what helped him kind of be that guy who he is today. But he kind of said, hey, man, I'm never going to disrespect Miami no matter what. What's kind of your take on that with a quarterback at Cal? Do you feel like this is one of those games where you kind of have to have that grit and hunger, or almost that dog mentality of being like, hey, man, I know Miami was kind of like your program, your favorite team leading up to this, but you're going to have to put that aside and we're going to need to see a different Fernando out of you.
Yeah, I think, that narrative kind of falls all across, particularly like just our roster. The two vocal leaders on both sides of the ball, both Mendoza on the offensive side and also David Reese, who played for Florida for, I think, 4 years before he transferred here last year, are going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder playing Miami. But for all I know of how that culture in that locker room is, it's once the lights turn on and once kickoff happens, it's just a game to them. It doesn't the logo on the front of the jersey does not matter to them. They're more worried about getting out of and winning the game, more so than the opponent that they're playing. And they'll take a little bit of that aggression in, but the way that Wilcox has built the program and how guys speak from the program outwardly, they never slander an opponent. They never say they're not that good or anything of that sort. They give every team the respect that they deserve, and go out and play like they do as well. So I think Nando might not say it, but I'm sure there's a little bit of that. I think he did mention it maybe in the off season or maybe last year, where or as soon as the ACC move kind of was formulating, it was that game probably will be circled on my calendar, and it's they're coming here, which is a little bit different. I think the emotions might be a little bit more different if we were traveling to Miami, but nonetheless, he's definitely going to have a lot of friends and family here. His family still live out there. His dad is going to be at the game too with his family. So yeah, it's I think they'll play with a chip on their shoulder, but yeah, they're never going to say that out loud.
Now, as you being a Cal fan as well and gearing up for this big time matchup against Miami, going to the opposite end of quarterback for us, I mentioned Mendoza's stats, compared to what Cam Ward currently has through 5 games, and it's almost doubled of almost every statistic category you could think of. What is Cal's fan base perspective, media, football team, football program? What is the overall look from y'all's perspective going into this matchup against a Hurricanes team that finally have a legit guy at quarterback that, pretty much any college football team should be scared of when you line up against them in Cam Ward?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because there are some storylines here, right? Like Cam Ward was at Washington State last year and the year before, and we were in the same conference with them. We've played Cam Ward, and he had a pretty good game throwing the ball against us. But with turnovers, I think he had 3 fumbles against us in that game last year, and almost made the comeback, but ultimately Washington State lost. So there is some familiarity there. I mean, even with your running back Damian Martinez, who's at Oregon State, we've played Oregon State for years now. So there's a little bit of familiarity with Cam Ward, the name and his style of play, particularly with Bears fans having seen him up close at Memorial last year too. So to see him in back-to-back years, of course, vastly different offenses, and production, of course, vastly different as well. So we're kind of afraid, but at the same time, it's like we've played him before, and we've seen what can happen if he does make mistakes. So I guess I think the fan base is kind of hoping, can we capitalize and force him to make some mistakes like he did against us last year? But I mean, that doesn't mean that we're taking away from what he's been doing, throwing the ball and running the ball this year so far, because it's been pretty magical to see.
Yeah, going back to your offense, talking about the running back and receiving core, I would say that your running back is kind of running back by committee, very similar to Miami, just maybe not the glaring and big eye names that you would expect like Miami has. But from a production standpoint, it seems like there's not a guy in the running back room that y'all really rely on the most. But as far as wide receivers, one thing I did see that was pretty interesting was you guys only have a total of 5 receiving touchdowns this year so far. But there's one player in particular, Najee Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, who actually recorded 4 out of those 5 receiving touchdowns alone by himself. Tell us a little bit about Hunter and his game and some other guys that you think Miami needs to look after for on the offensive side of football.
Yeah, to start with the wide receivers before I touch on the running backs and the tight ends. Nizia wasn't really expected to produce like this. It kind of was a little bit by need. We had transfers come in, Keon Grace from Ohio State and Tobias Merriweather from Notre Dame, and those two guys were, all throughout fall camp, looked to be the 1-2 punch at wide receiver going into the season. Unfortunately, the two of them went down right before the season started, and we still don't have a timetable for them and when they'll come back. So guys had to step up. Jonathan Brady had to step up. Maven Anderson had to step up. Tron Grizel, who was our leading receiver last year, who was at the outside, and they moved him into the slot this year. He's having to have adjusted to a new role. And Nizia as well has been needing to play, and then all of a sudden he just erupts starting that first game. And all of us who have watched camp and followed the team kind of knew he was going to get his chance at some point. I think he was too talented not to. But the fact that he was just a redshirt freshman, I think they wanted to give him more time, particularly because we had Jake Spavital as the offensive coordinator last year, and then we move on to Mike Blesh as the offensive coordinator this year. To have him switch to offensive coordinators as he's still a young wide receiver, I think they just wanted to bring him along a little slowly. But yeah, it just, he got the opportunity and he seized it, and he's just been an absolute monster, just grabbing catches from everywhere. In terms of his game, he's agile, he's quick, he's very good off his release and into his cuts. I'd say his ability to high point the ball wherever you throw to him is one of his biggest attributes. His hand-eye coordination is really good, and if you watch some of his touchdowns and catches, they're all varied. There's one against Florida State down like a deep ball where he like high points it as he's jumping backwards, catches it with 2 hands. His second touchdown, I think, on the year was like he scooped it basically at his ankles as Mendoza tossed it to him on a little whip route. So like the diversity of catches is there, the ability is there, and so his rise is surprising and yet also not surprising. And then, you talked about the running backs. I think the biggest issue for us is that we do have a star running back in Jay Knott, but Aft was hurt in that first game against Davis and then wasn't able to go, or played a little bit at Auburn, and then we rested him against San Diego State. And then you could tell against Florida State that the first half he was kind of getting his legs back, and by the second half you could tell that his legs were back, his vision was coming back a little bit too. So hopefully over the bye week, I think they might have recovered him to full strength. If he's fully available, I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries. He'll get anywhere between 18 and 25 touches in the game, and then behind him, you'll see Javian Thomas, who's a local kid from Oakland. He's pretty much cemented himself as the number 2 back, especially with his 165-yard performance, I think, against San Diego State. So that's probably the 1-2 punch if Jaden looks fully healthy, which I don't think he will not be on Saturday. And then offensively, tight end, I think Corey Dyches, who is a transfer, has come on strongly over the last couple of weeks. He had a few nice catches and a few nice moves against Florida State, and he's definitely like a Jimmy Graham type of player for us. If you see him line up, it's probably not to pass pro or run block. It's more so that he's going to be running out on a route. Our all-around back is Jack Endries, who's also a local kid. And he's the guy that kind of does it all. He's the safety net for Mendoza. He was one of Mendoza's favorite targets last year when Mendoza started. And so you'll see the two of them play. Mike Blesh, before the season started, has also said you'll see at least one tight end on the field at all times. So, you might see some 12 personnel, you might see some 13 personnel, you might see some 11 personnel. And so with that, I think you'll get a little bit more varied looks from the tight end spot. But that's probably where our offense is coming from.
Now, one thing that I think Miami fans are kind of, licking their chops about, and something that they've kind of circled leading up to this matchup, is the Cal's regression of the offensive line from last year to this year is really glaring. They're one of probably the worst offensive lines in the country statistic standpoint that Miami will probably be playing all year. And this is also a defensive line in Miami that was projected before the season started to be one of the best in the countries. And now, leading up to this football game, we will now have our number 1 leading pass rusher and one of the top leading pass rushers in college football, and Ruben Bain finally be healthy and kind of have his first go around in the season. Mm-hmm. The first time he ever had a snap this football season was against Florida. He only had 2 snaps and he was out after that. So we've held him out through 4 games after. But this will be a guy that'll be paired with Tyler Barron, Simeon Barrow, along with a lot of other guys. And as I mentioned before, this is a Cal offensive line that really hasn't been able to get it together. What is your overall thoughts on Cal's O-line compared to our D-line? And do you expect Cal's offensive coordinator, who, to your point, this is his first year, how do you feel like he's going to implement some of the screens and quick passes to maybe, stabilize some of these elite pass rushers that Miami has?
Yeah, the offensive line has been a real question mark, not also because of production, but also due to injury. Will McDonald, who's a transfer from Coastal Carolina, is at the top of the depth chart at center, but he didn't play the first 2.5 games, and he got the start against Florida State. Siope Vadakani, who's our best right guard and probably our best offensive lineman, has not played all season, and then got his first start and first playing time at Florida State. So the question mark that a lot of the writers and discussions we had after that Florida State game was it better maybe to have continuity going into that Florida State game, playing the offensive line that it played together, or is it about raising the talent floor and bringing in those guys that were expected to be the starters and have a big impact? So if those guys are healthy, and Wilcox did say in his press conference today that Vadakani is probable to play. So if he does play, that does make it very interesting from our end, just because Blesh is a coach who wants to establish the run game first. That's what they're gonna try to do. So it's one of those things where we from my perspective, we just won't know until that first snap if that offensive line has the same procedural penalties that we did at Florida State, which I'm hoping the reason was because they haven't gelled together as a unit with 2 new faces on that line and a new center. And just being away at Florida State, hopefully the home crowd helps them settle down a little bit. And then also like just having Tejeda back there as your feature back. And so combining those two and those guys getting healthy is going to make for a very interesting battle on that offensive line versus that defensive line. We definitely have had issues in pass protection. I don't think the run game has had as big of an issue. I think PFF has us at a decent score with the run game, but in pass pro, yeah, it's been an issue. Mendoza's been sacked and hit a lot. Doesn't matter what type of opponent we're playing, whether we're playing FCS or Power 5 in Auburn and Florida State. So that's going to be a very big question mark. What Blesh does he keep another tight end to give him another blocker to protect Mendoza a little bit? Does he try and bait the front seven of Miami to, as you said, use their aggression against them into screens and quick passes and slants? I don't know I honestly don't know what the game plan is going to be. It's going to be very interesting. But yeah, pass pro is definitely something that I'm going to be looking forward to. And I feel like if Mendoza gets sacked just, as much as he's gotten, with those bodies that Miami has on that defensive line, it's going to be a long night for the Bears. So that's definitely a big point of emphasis that I'll be looking forward on Saturday.
Before we flip to the defensive side of the ball, and also some of the long nights that our potential Cane fans that want to experience college game day may have, which we'll talk about later on in the show, I need all of our fans and listeners to please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for us. And also make sure you go to CanesWear.com, or if you're in the Davie area at 2655 South University Drive, you got to make sure you stop in there and see Brett and the rest of the gang, Jeff and others. They got all the newest CanesWear apparel, whether it's your newest pullovers, newest coaches polos. They got all the new Cam Ward jerseys in, white, black, orange, green. They even got the kid ones coming in next week. And then the new Adidas Alpha Boost that you're seeing all over the internet the last 24 hours. They should be getting a big bulk of those in the next week or so. So please make sure you go stop. We'll only shop over at CanesWear, CanesWear.com. Not only for Cane fans, Miami Dolphins, Florida Panthers, Inter Miami, and others. Make sure you go to CanesWear.com. But going back to our guy Rob, writer for Cal and co-host of Golden Bear Cast, we're breaking down this Miami Cal matchup. We talked a little bit about the offensive side of football for both programs. One of the biggest things I saw going into this football game right off the bat was just the glaring stat of Cal's defense. I believe they lead the nation with 10 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. And they got a corner by the name of Noel Williams that I want you to tell me a little bit more about. Probably going to be the best corner Miami might face all year, because this is a guy that has an interception every single game, if I'm not mistaken, so far this year. And when you really turn on the tape of this Cal's defense, they're a physical bunch and they tackle very, very well, which is something Miami didn't do this past week. Yeah,
I mean, this defense has come on in a way that a lot of Cal fans did not expect. We expected some regression to, what we're used to under Justin Wilcox, which are great defenses. We didn't have a great one last year. We had issues tackling and so on. So it's been a nice surprise to have. Noel Williams is the name you bring up. The interceptions also is, I think we've dropped to second now, but yeah, it's a one interception difference between first and second. So, but Noel's been outstanding. He's a transfer for us from UNLV last year. Played extremely well for us, and I had him pegged as cornerback one going into the season, and he's definitely played like it. He basically can, you can put him on an island against any type of wide receiver, and he'll pretty much lock him down for most of the game. Of course, wide receivers are going to break off for catch here and there, right? But for most of the game, it's I don't think quarterbacks have tried to throw to him, and particularly not with those interceptions. And he's also, the other thing is he's also returned a kick return for a touchdown too this year. So he's helping the team in two facets of the game, and so he's just a multi-dimensional dude for us. And whether it's zone or man, he definitely can do very well on the outside.
You mentioned Noel as far as him being able to lock down pretty much any receiver, and obviously Miami's got a few of those guys, leading with Xavier Strepo, Jacoby George. Isaiah Horton and St. Brown and others. Is Williams one of those corners that he could kind of move like a chess piece anywhere around the field, or is he more of a boundary guy? Because obviously having a skilled wide receiver like Xavier Strepo, who plays a lot of the slot, is he a guy capable of to where he could just move wherever the best player is, or do you expect him to be more of a boundary guy for you
Yeah,
guys?
I think in terms of our scheme and how our defense is played, he'll play mostly the boundary.
Okay.
But we do have a couple of slot guys that do play both outside and inside and up at safety. So that's probably who we're expecting will match up against Restrepo. Yeah, we were looking at the stats for Miami as well, and I think PFF had him over like 80% from the slot. So it's the slot, the tight ends, and the tight end spot and a running quarterback have been Cal's Achilles heel against opposing offenses, just historically. So that's kind of what I was worried about with Restrepo, because he's just so dynamic from that slot receiver position. So I think we'll probably put a safety on him. You might see Jair Williams on him a little bit, maybe some Cam Sidney. Maybe if Josiah Wagner, who is a transfer from Oklahoma, if he's healthy and ready to go, you might see him on him a little bit too. So there are some guys that they'll try and mix and match and see what they can do against him. I'm sure, they're gonna disguise some of the defenses too to make it seem like maybe it's man against Restrepo, and then all of a sudden, sit back into a zone, and just have him try and work the soft spots instead of having to try and keep up with him in his cuts and his double moves.
I mentioned before about the fundamentally sound team so far through these 4 or 5 games, and how the tackling has been really subpar. Two guys to really account for that are your linebackers and Teddy Buchanan and Cade. Both have just really been tackling machines for you guys. Besides those two in particular that play linebacker, is there another player specifically maybe at the defensive line position that Miami may need to watch out for? Because obviously this is a Miami offensive line that we feel pretty confident in. We hope to improve from what we did last year, hopefully get 1 or 2 guys back in the lineup. But I do think that last game, Virginia Tech going up against a pass rusher like Powell, I don't necessarily think that Cal has someone in that caliber. I could be wrong, but this is why we got you up here for.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you 2 names here. I think David Reese is the big one. He led the team in sacks last year. I believe he had 7 sacks to end the last 4 games or 3 games in the season last year. And he hasn't really been healthy to start the season. And he played some snaps against Florida State, which looks like to us it's that they're revving him back into game shape. So if he's fully ready to go against Florida State, that's probably the biggest one to watch. I think the other one that's kind of emerged in his stead has been Ryan McCulloch, who's a sophomore defensive edge. He had 11 quarterback hurries through the first 2 weeks of the season. I believe he's still top 10 in terms of quarterback pressures. So the stat with sacks and stuff, it's you're one fingertip away from being a quarterback hurry or a sack, or you're one quarterback, chucking the ball to the sideline away from it being a sack versus an incomplete pass, right? So him with that, I think he has 15 so far in the season after, or 15 or 16 on the season after that. So he's definitely a guy that's surprised a lot of us. It's surprised the coaches too. They expected a lot from him, but they didn't expect a lot from him like this.
Oh. Somebody cut out?
Nothing. Are we back?
Yeah, good. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, having Reese back definitely helps that rotation with him and Xavier Carlton and TJ Ballers, who's from Wisconsin, and also Ryan McCulloch. You're going to see those 4 guys move in and out of the lineup, and giving us a full 2 deep at those spots is going to be huge, particularly because those guys are going to have to be chasing Cam Ward. It's going to happen. We're not going to be able to contain him for all of the game. So having some fresh legs in there, being able to set the edge properly, and also, Damian Martinez is no joke as well. So it'll be very nice to have those guys back, and I'm hoping that those guys have a big game this week.
For sure, man. Absolutely. I tell you, man, had broke down this Cal football team to the T. I don't think I could pick of anybody else better to have on the show. Before I let you out of here and give you your score prediction of this football game and also let people know where they can find you, one last thing we need to talk about is I got a lot of Miami Hurricane fans that follow me on social media and also watch the show. And a lot of them, hopefully most of them, will be making that trip to Berkeley here this week. And one of the biggest things that they got on their list, right? We mentioned at the beginning of the show, one of the reasons why you got a busy schedule this week is this is the first time ever that College Game Day will be visiting Berkeley. I saw Aaron Rodgers earlier on ESPN talk about some of the restaurants or some places to go to.
Yep.
But between the College Game Day etiquette that you talked about, off the air that we need to discuss, and some of the restaurants that you think Miami fans need to go to, let's break it down. I know there's not too many like you that know as much information that Miami fans need to know about this College Game Day experience.
Yeah, it's gonna be a week for sure. I mean, game day starts at 6 a.m. or airs at 6 a.m. I think the pit opens at 3, I believe. If you want to get into the pit behind the stage, so you got that going, and then ends at 9, and then you got the game at 7:30. So I'm gonna highly recommend people take naps. The weather is supposed to be fairly warm this Saturday too, as of right now. So you probably don't want to be drinking starting at 9 a.m. till 7:30. You probably want to take a 6-hour break somewhere in there and maybe rev it back up once the sun starts to set.
You there? Think there's something going on with Rob's internet. We will have him back here shortly. But I tell you what, I'm glad we had Rob on because some of the names that he brought up with Cal and some of the great points that he brought up, not only with the offensive line but the defensive line. I completely forgot a guy named David Reese who played in the backyard of where I'm living here in Gainesville at Florida. Having him on with Cal, that is a name that I definitely heard of that could be a guy to watch if he is healthy. But if we get Rob back on here shortly, we'll bring him back up. But if not, you guys have definitely heard some of the best information that we've heard. Rob, what's up, man? You're back.
There we go. Yeah, I guess my internet cut out for a second there.
You're good, man. You're good. So we're
Yeah.
talking about the College Game Day etiquette.
Yeah,
Some of the restaurants. Pits open at 3.
Yeah.
It ends at 9, and then obviously the game's all the way not till 9:30, 7:30 your way.
Yeah.
What can fans expect from the atmosphere of just Cal fans, and also what are some places that you recommend they stop at?
Yeah, everything I've heard so far is that the Cal fans are going to be out in full force. I know so many people that are flying in for this that are alumni, because it's been on their bucket list to see game day at Cal for years. I don't think anyone could have written the script of it coming to us this year. I think there were years past where we thought we might get it at some point in the season, maybe with Jared Goff, maybe with Aaron Rodgers, but it just didn't happen. So yeah, people say that what Cal fans, there aren't a lot of Cal fans out there. I tell you, man, like you're going to watch that game day, and be very surprised at how many people there are out there that want to see it succeed. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a very fun day, and even if you're a Miami fan, you're gonna enjoy seeing some of the memes and the posters that guys have planned right now. Because there's a ton of group chats with all the burners right now through Calgorithm, figuring out what they want to print and post and so on. And I've got a glimpse into some of that, and it's gonna be pretty cool.
Well, let's see if it ends up getting released with ammo, man. Because like I said, this is a big time matchup for Cal and another big game for Miami. Like I said before, we scaped the win against Virginia Tech. It could have been a little bit out of reach than expected if our defense would have stepped up. But we got another week, another opponent in your Cal Bears. But before I get you out of here, man, what's your score prediction of the game? Like I mentioned before, man, this is a Cal program. It's been around for 138 years, right? They're remembered by the Aaron Rodgers, the Goffs, the Marshawn Lynch, the Deshaun Jacksons. And you guys got 5 championships just like Miami, but unfortunately, y'all's are even more further back. I think the last one was like 1937, like
Yeah.
right when Jesus was taking snaps at quarterback, right? But you got this matchup, Miami First Cal, 2-2 all time. I believe you guys won the last matchup in 2008. College game day, first time ever. What's your prediction?
So whenever I'm on a podcast like this, I always try to give 2 predictions. One's like my head pick, my
Okay.
rational pick, and then one me as a fan in my heart pick, right? So I'll start with the heart pick. I think with the emotions of all of this, with game day in tow, and just everyone that's going to be there, and the stadium looking like it's about to be sold out, I think I'm going to go with a Cal win with my heart.
Okay.
I'll put a 35-17 score there.
Ooh, with the heart. Not only are you
With the
going
heart.
with the win, but you're saying, all right, they're gonna win by 17 plus.
Yeah,
I like
with
that.
with a heart, with my heart.
Okay.
My head pick, is a little bit different. There's just so many battles that I'm just looking at the roster breakdown that I don't think Cal gets an edge in enough to get the victory here. Football's played on the field. Yes, I understand that, and players make mistakes, and all of that included. There's sometimes a talent deficiency that you just can't make up, and some of that athleticism that you can't make up, and that's kind of what separates you, right? That's kind of what happened in Florida State against us. Is DJU's not a great quarterback, but he just made just enough good plays and just enough good throws to get them that victory against us. So my head pick here is going to be also 35-17, but to the Miami Hurricanes.
Okay, so you're consistent with the score.
Yeah.
Different outcome, whether you're thinking with the head or the heart. I like that.
Yeah.
My score is going to be 38-13 Miami.
Oof, okay.
If you don't follow me on social media, this wouldn't be the first time I have hit a score prediction so far this year. I hit the exact score of the Miami-Florida game, week 1. So hopefully I could get another shot at this.
You're on one. You're on one.
Yeah, so 38-13 Miami for me, man. But like you mentioned before, man, it's what's done on the football field that matters, not these stats. But at the end of the day, we don't play the football games, but we do a really good job at covering our football team. So I want to make sure that you give a shout out to what you do on a daily basis, man, because you do a great job. So make sure the Cane fans and Cal fans that are tuned into the show, make sure where they can find your great work at, Rob.
Yeah, so for all our written stuff, you can find it at writeforcalifornia.com. We have previews, opponent previews, roundtable posts. There's a bunch of things going up about game day, how to get there, what times, what to do around there, where to park, game day etiquette as well. So if you're a Canes fan coming into town and you just need a little bit of help regarding that, check out our website. It should drop later in the week as we compile some more information for that. In terms of the podcast, it's the California Golden Bear Cast. On Twitter, it's at Golden Bear Cast. You can find us on pretty much any podcast platform that you listen to. So if you want to come hang out with some good Cal fans and a pretty awesome community, hop on in.
Awesome, man. Rob, man, we appreciate you so much for taking some time out of the busy week of chopping it up about this Miami Cal preview. Hey, man, we'll see what happens at the end on Saturday, man, but I think it's going to be a great atmosphere and experience for any of the fans that have the opportunity of traveling. Make sure you have a safe trip. But yeah, thank you again, Rob, for taking some time, man. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe. This is only on FTSN CanesWear Podcast. I'm Brad. We're out.